Very many of you may remember the video called True Jews or Black African. I just discovered that the video had been deleted probably about 4 or 5 months ago or more. The last comment being about late August last year. So it was just done, obviously, as a bit of a laugh. You can see I'm in Africa right now. I can guarantee there's no synagogues around here. People don't know about really eating kosher. People don't really know that much about keeping commandments. Even though there's some good things in cultures that I'm sure that please God. For example, here they don't really eat that much pork as they do in Europe. I don't think they eat black pudding as much as they does. It's not very much available here, certainly as it is in Europe. So I mean, these things are good. I think that's what probably makes the church a little bit better spiritually than in Europe, because without really knowing it, they do keep quite a few of the Torah, few commandments. But obviously the things like the Sabbath, even though the SDA church is quite big here, but it's, there's some traditions in different tribes that they wear head coverings and all that stuff, and so you can argue, that there's some cultures here that are very much like what you call the Black Hebrew Israelites, but none of them would say that you can only be a Jew by birth. The New Testament teaches that when a man is born again, Apostle Paul says you're now a spiritual Jew. He taught at length to the Jewish and the Gentile church at the time, saying there's one new man in Messiah Yeshua. If you remember that Jesus said, God can raise up sons of Abraham out of the stones of the ground. If you won't praise the Son of Man or the King of Kings, then the stones will cry out, and praise him. The Lord said things like that. And the fact that God is looking to circumcise hearts, He's not really interested that much in circumcising the flesh. But when we get the circumcision of the Holy Spirit, that in effect really is circumcising your flesh. And I've heard still, there's people I respect on YouTube. Some, for example, Sean Ross, I don't believe he's a born-again Christian, but he does expose a lot of the things that Satan is doing. He's quite anti physical circumcision, which again, one way or the other. I mean, the Jews went through a lot of persecution in Europe for that practice. It's not a sin, but it's just not needed anymore. Just like, how would you say, if something isn't needed, you don't really need to do it, but it's not a sin if you do it, if you know what I'm saying, because the Torah, remember, is the schoolmaster that brings us to Christ. And there are, of course, certain laws that are still standing. I mean, if you're still want to walk with the Lord, Paul said, don't eat things that are strangled. How many of you eat chickens that have been, that's the way they've been killed, strangled? Or they said, don't eat blood. Black pudding is blood. Look at all the Christian Europeans and different places in the world that break these New Testament commandments. Also talks about a woman dressing femininely and a male dressing masculinely. And just look at the state of the way things are in a lot of churches these days. The big thing, it used to be feminism the past 20 or 30 years, but now it's transhumanism, and also it's transsexualism as well. So it's kind of, there are the things that are coming up now, and in the future it's going to be, I suppose, when they find the so-called other races, these are fallen angelic races, when they start doing that and they start coming out of the woodwork, as it were, the places where they are, probably going to be revealed, then it'll all be about merging humanity with these fallen beings. And I believe that's what it was in the days of Noah as well. There's actual marriages between so-called aliens. They're not really aliens, they're fallen angelic beings. Christians sometimes teach them as demons. Well, they're not just spirits, they have physical bodies as well. There are physical races that live upon this earth and under the earth and in the heavens that have physical bodies. You know, they are children of the fallen angels, and they're in the Bible, called Nephilim. And they were all over the Middle East, and when it was time, God sent Israel in to destroy them all. But I think it was, I don't know if it was Judah or it was some other tribes that couldn't destroy all of the Nephilim tribes. So they sort of went underground. In that period, they came back, and they merged themselves into different armies, like the Philistine armies, and you look at more recent records of the Roman armies. The Romans defeated a lot of these Nephilim giant tribes in Europe, but they still exist. They went underground. And I believe it's them that are leading a lot of the many secret societies in the world. Anyhow, and David Icke touches on it as well, by the way, about the, the reptilians. That's a sort of a race of them, fallen angelic race. Anyhow, so you can see this is one of the last comments about June last year. My people, can you not tell that this is him being sarcastic? Many people thought I was being serious, but I didn't really know. There's one, 31st of August, that was about the last comment. I didn't know that many of the black Israelites think that they're the only ones. The ones that have been in the slave ships are actually the Israelites, and the rest of the Africans here are not Israelites. That's a firmly held opinion by the black Israelite community. But here's a comment. The 12 tribes are still in Africa. 2/3 of the continent is Bantu or Hebrew. So she's actually saying there's about 1 billion people in Africa. So she's saying that 750 million people are actually from descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, I don't know about that. In West Africa alone, there's probably about at least 50 to 100 tribes, probably well over 100 languages. So you see, like the Igbo tribe are Jewish West African tribe. Some that claim lineage in South Africa as well as the white South Africans as well, are quite, although they're from Dutch and German descent, most of them, they are quite friends with, as Sean Ross says, with the Jewish people. But here we see some communities, most in the south and the north of Africa, that do practice a form of Judaism. Ethiopia has got the most ancient biblical calendar in the world. It's believed that they still keep it, very much being overrun by Muslims at the moment, but a very, very strong Christian tradition in Ethiopia. Of course, the first so-called Gentile Christian was from Ethiopia, when Philip was translated. And so the actual Jewish population in Africa, you see that South Africa, there's many tribes there that claim Jewish lineage. South Africans themselves are fairly friendly of Dutch and German descent to Jews, and you see the far north, some in the east, and a vast rise in the Pan-Sahara region and the Congo. For some reason, we know that the Jews were offered part of Uganda, I think, pre-1947. So yeah, people are interested in the culture. Yes, and there are probably about 1% of the billion people here claim Jewish life.